according to the Vedic conception, or the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, we have this world, which is the physical world, the material world. And then there is another world beyond this, which is called the spiritual world. And the spiritual world in Sanskrit is called Vaikuntha. So Kunta means anxiety, and Vaikuntha means that place where there is no anxiety. So the spiritual world is that place where there's no anxiety. The scriptures explain in the spiritual world, every step is a dance, every word is a song, every action is an action of love. And the spiritual world is the place where we can actually experience true happiness, because that's when we're actually in our true position. So within the spiritual world there are different places. Golok is one of those places, and many, many different places are there. So it's all described. You raise a question that's been discussed for many, many centuries amongst philosophers. People ask, why do bad things happen to good people? Yeah, which really means, why do bad things happen to me? Because I'm a good person. Right? I think if we look at the question, why do bad things happen to good people? I think the first thing is that in our lives, if we really reflect, then often we don't know what a good thing and a bad thing is. Because sometimes we are seeing within a very limited perspective. I was recently reading a news article where someone was recounting how one morning they woke up and they found that all 4 of their wheels, the tires had been slashed, so 4 punctured wheels, and they had to get to work, and it was a really important day at work, and they had some huge business deals on, and the fact that they couldn't get into work meant that this was a major loss of $20,000 or $30,000, like that. So you can imagine how the person must have felt in the morning. So they came out, they saw the car, they realized what it meant for them financially, and they were cursing God that, how could you do this to me? The interesting thing is, that day was the 9th of September. And if they had made it on time, sorry, not the 9th of September, 11th of September, 9/11, right?
Yeah.
It's been a long time. It was a long time ago. It was that day. And had they made it on time to their office that day, they probably wouldn't have been alive. So, in a very, we often view life in a very limited perspective, and therefore we see things as good and bad. But in an eternal perspective, everything is actually meant for our ultimate spiritual development. Now I know that's difficult when we're going through things, when we see other people suffer, that's very difficult to digest. But if we always try to take a spiritual perspective and philosophical perspective, then we'll see that actually over time things become very clear, and we actually realize a lot of growth from even the most difficult circumstances. Once a grandmother, she was knitting, I don't know if anyone here still knits, but she was knitting, and her granddaughter was on the ground, and as she was knitting for hours and hours, and after 3 hours of knitting, the granddaughter who was on the ground, she looked up and she said, "Grandma, you've been knitting for 3 hours, but it just looks like a big mess." Right? Because when you're knitting, on the bottom it looks like a mess, right? If we turn our clothes upside down, then we see it doesn't look so nice. So the granddaughter said, "It's just a big mess." So then the grandma, she picked the granddaughter up, and then she lifted her above the knitting. And then the granddaughter saw the knitting, but this time from the top. And then she said, "Actually, it's a wonderful pattern." And in our lives, sometimes it's like that. We're seeing everything from that perspective, and we're thinking, how does this fit in? Is God really there? why is this happening to me? But over time, through the help of spiritual books, spiritual teachers, and ultimately God Himself, we are lifted up and we see everything from a different perspective. And then we get a much deeper insight into why the things that are happening to me are actually happening to me. That's a very good question. Thank you. I think the concept of just teachers is a very important concept. Like, regardless of whether we're trying to learn spiritual things or whether it's just material knowledge, what we call material knowledge of the world, teachers are very important. Teachers have experience. Teachers have spent that time studying themselves. Teachers know that the obstacles that may come and the confusions that may arise. And therefore, to learn something with the help of a teacher in any discipline is very desirable. And therefore, the spiritual discipline is no different. And it's said that actually to really understand spiritual knowledge, we need teachers. We need gurus. We need people who are outside of the perspective of our own life to help us understand how to apply these teachings into our specific circumstance. And therefore, one poet, he says, it's very difficult to see the picture when you're inside the frame. And therefore, gurus or spiritual teachers are essentially looking at our lives from a perspective outside of our own life and are able to take ancient wisdom and at the same time take our particular life situation and help us understand how they fit together nicely. And therefore, gurus are very important. But I must add also that gurus are not stereotyped. Sometimes if I say the word guru and I ask you to think of something, then maybe a stereotyped image is coming in the mind of what a guru is. Someone maybe in saffron robes, a renunciate, someone who's very old and maybe has glasses and is very wise and has a big book. But actually a guru simply means someone who has spiritual wisdom. And therefore all of us are in one sense acting as gurus for each other, because all of us have some spiritual insight into the world. So the ancient books talk about not only having one guru, but actually having many spiritual teachers around us who can help us on our spiritual journey. And in that way we get a helping hand towards our goal. I think it's something, I think we all have, according to the Vedic conception, this life is a chapter of a longer story. In other words, we've been here before and we'll continue to be here after. And therefore, whoever we are now is basically an amalgamation of many, many different experiences and interactions and life events from previous lives also. So we all come into this world with a unique kind of personality. And therefore, I think from a young age, I was always kind of attracted towards maybe simplicity, maybe a natural way of life. And although I wasn't very religious, I grew up in a family of Hindus, but it was very kind of ritualistic, and I never thought about it too much. But I was always attracted towards simplicity. And as I started university, that's when I was about 16 or 17, I first really began reading these wisdom literatures, and I guess over time it grew. By the time I was 18, I actually wanted to study philosophy at UCL, but my parents convinced me to do something more practical, so I ended up studying information management, computer science and management. And I spent 3 years at university. And I think by the end of university, I felt I had a good experience. I graduated. But I felt like I had a different calling in life. I think I felt that I wanted to contribute to the world in a slightly different way. And therefore I took some time out. I went to India for a year, and I traveled and met many spiritual people, and gathered some spiritual gems of wisdom. And when I came back, I decided to join the temple for a 6-month period just to see how it goes, and I have been there ever since, 10 years. So I don't think there was a defining moment where I just had like a flash of inspiration, but I think it was something which grew over time, and something which seemed very kind of natural to me. But I will add, like here, it's written, and I probably have to change this because it's on the website, but it says, I was keenly seeking something beyond the 9 to 5. And I don't write that in a sense in which I'm trying to stereotype spirituality. I think the Vedic scriptures talk about how one can be spiritual in any sphere of life. One may well have a 9 to 5 job, but be very spiritual, because spirituality is not confined to a lifestyle or an external life situation. But I think we're all individuals, and we all have a lifestyle which is natural for us. And for some it may be a life of renunciation, and for others it may be a life within family, within society, with work and other things, and that's fine. You can be just as spiritual in both. So I think it was just probably a personal choice, and if anyone would like to do it, you can, and if not, no problem. Because ultimately spirituality is something deep within us, and it can't be stereotyped on an external. And I've met many people who work and live in the corporate world, but are extremely spiritual and have very, very deep values, and I learn a lot from them. So I don't think, I think it's open to everyone, and it's just a matter of embracing the values more than anything. Sure, definitely. We try to use all of our skills and all of the knowledge or whatever expertise we have to use that for a spiritual purpose. So definitely we create websites, we have mobile phones. I don't have an iPad yet, maybe soon. But we use technology, and we use all of this, whatever we have at our disposal. But obviously we try to use it in a way that spiritually progresses the world. So in our tradition we don't see anything as good or bad per se. It just depends how you use it. Like, say for example, I could have a knife here, and what are we going to call a knife good or bad? Well, in the hand of a surgeon it could probably save someone's life. In the hand of a mass murderer, it's not very good. So a knife is not good or bad per se, but it's just simply how you use it. So whatever we have at our disposal, we try to use in a way that creates harmony, peace, and well-being within society. And in that way progress the world.